Hello everyone, my name is Miss Annette Bourne and I am an adjunct faculty here at ASU, and I have been teaching social work for a number of years, and it's an absolute passion of mine. So thank you for joining me for today's mini lesson. I'm going to be going over family systems and a little bit about background on working with families, as well as the assessment and engaging of families, how that differs, and how it's sometimes often a good thing to work with families and know how different it is than to work with individuals, and how they're similar, how they're alike. So let's jump right in. Families, every single one of us is part of a family. Our family units all look different. The makeup of a family has evolved over the years, and although the family structure has evolved over the years, sometimes we may be working with children, or sometimes we may be working with individuals, and you may think to yourself, well, I don't really plan on working with families. I only want to work with children or with families. However, every individual is tied to a family of some sort. And so I tell my students all the time that even though you may think you may not be working with families as a client or as a group, you will inevitably end up working with families at some point in your career. So it's important to know that there's a uniqueness in working with families. We are all born into families. They are the foundation of how we see the world and how we interact with others. And I'll get to the definition of family a little bit later, because that's changed, right, over the course of many decades. And but family, if you really look at the root of this definition of the philosophical, definition of family, it's supposed to be a place where one finds a feeling of home. And if I were to ask you to define what the word home means to you, everyone's going to have a different response. Some individuals may include a mom or a dad or a sibling. Some others would possibly even include family members, or extended family or relatives, or a makeup of just different individuals that create this sense and feeling of home. And ultimately, when we're working with families or individuals who are a part of family, we want to acknowledge and find strength in areas, places, and with people where individuals find a sense of home. Family is also considered a system, and it's actually a system within a system. So I don't want to get too complex. Hopefully it'll be easy for you to understand as I'm trying to provide a visual for you. But the ecological systems isn't new, should be something that we have gone over in many of our classes. It's the idea that an individual is part of a system, which is part of a larger system like families and community. So family, the group of individuals that make up a family, are in fact a system, but they're also part of this much larger system. Which what I'm basically saying is it's a complex unit. There's some complexities and some challenges, a lot of strengths in working with this family dynamic. And one of the things I also wanted to share with you all is that it's evolved. The term family, as I mentioned earlier, has evolved over the years, and I want to share with you some trends that we've seen over, say, the last 50 to 60 years on something that maybe we define family. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar. In class, I always provide the visual of a picture of Leave It to Beaver. It was a show long time ago. It was mom at home, baking, cleaning, being home for the children that are not school aged yet, or sending off the kids to school. Dad would go to work, and there were usually a couple of kids, maybe even a family dog. That was really the when I would say the word family, what do you think of? That is what was the notion of family in, say, the 50s, 1950s. Talking about totally different century, but in the 1950s, you would think of this Leave It to Beaver type visual. Fast forward all those years, the term family and the definition of how you define family has changed, right? Many of the trends include grandparents who are raising their grandchildren, single parent households. We have seen trends that include the ever-changing role of women, where women are not necessarily in the home caring for their home and children, waiting for kind of dinner to be ready and served by them. The role of women has changed over the many past decades, and there's often a need for two-income household or a desire for a two-income household, and you have both guardians, if you will, or parents. You don't always see that picture anymore in society, although many of us, when we think of the word term family, it also is generational. Depends on who you ask. If you ask a 60-year-old versus a 16-year-old, that definition's gonna look different. Biracial, ethnic, blended families, and you have LGBTQ. It's ever changing, right? Families who are maybe not legally wed and living together with or without children. So you have just multiple dynamics. So that further complicates the idea that there's one way to work with families, right? Because there isn't a cookie cutter answer or method to working with individuals, and there definitely isn't a one method or one way of working with families. Paulo Freire once quoted and studied families and conveyed the importance that individuals have to a sense of belonging, connection, or connection to their roots. And we carry that within us. It's an integral part of a human being. And many individuals that we may work with, the challenges or issues that they may be dealing with may be rooted or steeped in the family dynamics. Often it's an individual battling some individual challenges, but you'll see a lot of individuals who some of those issues that come up in conversation that they're challenged with, again, are rooted within family and the family dynamics. Families that they may be a part of currently, or families that they were a part of when they were younger. So in essence, we do often find ourselves having conversations around this family system and the strengths of that family system, as well as the challenges. And you want to utilize the strengths perspective. You also want to utilize the ability for an individual to describe their family members to describe their role within a family, and taking note of that and really trying to hone in on, again, the strengths and maybe where are some areas that the family could potentially focus on as you're working with them as a unit. A few of the other trends that I want to call out are multi-generational extended families. Legal status, immigration, especially in the Southwest, is something that we will end up encountering more often than not. And several households having multiple families within them is not uncommon culturally, and also just within the varying economic circumstances that we may be living in. And so it's important to pull in also that cultural knowledge, sometimes by asking questions, right? It may seem to a social worker that If you have more than one family unit living in a household, well, they may be struggling, there may be some economic challenges, when in fact it is culturally acceptable, and not only culturally acceptable, but it is the way of life for certain cultures to live in multi-generational, but also multi-families living in a household. And those are just a few of the trends. We could be here all day just talking about trends alone. I'm going to pause and just ask yourself, if you were to define your family, if you were to describe your family, what would that look like? What would that description be like? So think about that for a bit. Then you can jot notes down if you'd like. How would you describe your family? Who are the members? What are the roles the members play? And then I'd also would welcome students to share their idea of home. When I say home, what is your description of that? Are the two the same? Are the individuals the same in both? Are the emotions and feelings and attachments similar? Are they different? These are the type of questions that would begin to open an engaging conversation with an individual who is part of a family or with family members to really recognize their family structure. And I'll get to more of that in a bit. But those are just two easy ways, trying to describe family, trying to describe home, and allowing a client to share that. You'll pick up on a lot. You'll be able to really hone in on and focus on maybe some areas of strengths and some areas of need that you can then build upon, create goals, maybe even create an implementation plan for and with your clients as you're having these conversations. So, two different types of engaging and that leads to assessment theories or types of work that I'd like to share with you. And this is something that you'll find in chapter 6 of your textbook. The first one is one that I absolutely love. I've utilized it in a lot of my work with families and groups, and it's the narrative theory. Allowing clients to provide a story, allowing clients to provide meaning to life events. Too often we get stuck on the things that are of a challenge, the things that we call the issues, right, within a case study. What are the problems we're trying to solve? And we often don't give enough attention and provide time and space for someone to narrate a story. The Native American cultures really, this is a pillar within their way of healing and within their way of just sharing information and passing down history and heritage stories is through narrating stories. Our clients often aren't given the opportunity or the time or the space to share their story, provide meaning to the circumstances, and not just tell me what happened, give me the dates. What would you like to do? How would you like to, what would you like to get out of our session? Those are all great questions to clarify and trying to figure out and find direction. But if you're able to provide some time and space for a client to narrate and provide meaning to their story, I think that is so much more effective to not only engage, build rapport with the client, but hear information that you may not hear just by some, intake questionnaire. Stories can explore possibilities, opportunities. Sometimes, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but when you say something out loud about a challenge or a problem you're having, it's like, I'm really having a problem with this. And then you kind of share out loud with a friend and you hear yourself. Often you find, oh, I know what to do. Because you're hearing yourself outside of your mind, which is full of just stuff all the time. Sometimes our clients, it's the same scenario. You're saying things out loud that you're hearing potentially for the first time because you were given the space to share. This also offers growth. It offers healing for individuals to be able to get off their chest things that they've been carrying for many years, often. So that's one, narrative theory. The other one is solution-focused work. The family is the expert. It's the idea that change is constant and inevitable. That is something that families and individuals need to be aware of. And that only a small amount of change really can make an impact. Intervention should focus on the future. So again, solution focus, forward thinking. Yes, we know all of this has occurred in the past and there's a lot of challenges. And unless you're doing long-term clinical therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy, solution focused work is with that information that you've just shared, how are we going to move forward? Let's create some goals. Let's create some solution patterns. And allowing clients to, and groups of families to really implement achievable goals, most likely short term, but also maybe even look forward to some long-term goals with little steps that get us there. Families determine the areas of focus and importance for them. And so this is again no different than working with individuals and trying to be there as a guide to facilitate, to make facile, right, to make easy the transition and the process of making change, of going in the right direction, which is the positive direction that the client would like to head into. This is the assessment process also includes working with families to co-construct an intervention plan. When you build that rapport, you can then move forward to building on the strengths, building on what you've heard of a family, and potentially reaching outside of the family to the, some external factors outside of the family unit that can be a focus for change and or for strength. And I'm going to actually chat a little bit about a third one that your book does a really good job about providing a visual for, which is mapping. Mapping you can do with a family as a whole, with individuals, and that description or the visual is truly a map of the individuals in the family as individuals and how their relationship is, their connection to the other members of the family, right? And that gives them a visual of who they have some strong ties to, who they have maybe some weaker ties to, or some challenging relationships, some stifled relationships with that maybe need to be worked on. And so if they map that out, it's a visual. Sometimes members of a family may feel that it's so overwhelming, so many factors and so many challenges that the family faces, but if you're able to map out where you can find strength as you're working within this system, that's the first place I think that clients feel a sense of hope or direction, as being able to truly define and see where there are strengths. So that was family systems in a nutshell. The goal is really to process and develop this work with families and recognize that there's strength and there's real resilience amongst the members, and a lot of complex and challenging maybe areas, but it also provides an opportunity for an entire unit that is part of a system to work together to make the system stronger. Thanks.